"What is a house?" Teal demanded of his friend, Homer Bailey. "Well," Bailey admitted cautiously, "speaking in broad terms, I've always regarded a house as a gadget to keep off the rain." "Nuts! You're as bad as the rest of them." "Well, I didn't say the definition was complete, but—" "Complete? It isn't even in the right direction. From that point of view, we might as well just be squatting in caves. But I don't blame you," Teal went on. "You're no worse than the lugs you find practicing architecture. Even the moderns, all they've done is to abandon the wedding cake school in favor of the service station school, chucked away the gingerbread and slapped on some chromium. But at heart, they are as conservative and traditional as a country house. Neutra, Schinder, what have those bums got? What Frank Lloyd Wright, what has he got I don't got?" "Commissions," his friend answered. "Huh? What'd you say?" Teal stumbled slightly in the flow of words, did a slight double-take, and recovered himself. "Commissions. Correct. And why? Because I don't think of a house as an upholstered cave. I think of it as a machine for living, a vital process, live, dynamic thing, changing with the mood of the dweller, not a dead, static, oversized coffin. Why should we be held down by the frozen concepts of our ancestors? Any fool with a little smattering of descriptive geometry can design a house in any ordinary way. Is the static geometry of Euclid the only mathematics? How about modular system, to say nothing of the rich suggestions of stereochemistry? Isn't there a place in architecture for transformation, for actual structures?" "Blessed if I know," answered Bailey. "You might just as well be talking about the fourth dimension for all it means to me." "And why not? Why should we limit ourselves to—" "Say," he interrupted himself, and stared into the distance. "Homer, I think you've really got something. After all, why not? Think of the infinite richness of articulation and relationship in four dimensions. What a house! What a house!" He stood quite still, his pale, bulging eyes blinking thoughtfully. Bailey reached up and shook his arm. "Snap out of it. What the hell are you talking about, four dimensions? Time is the fourth dimension. You can't drive nails into that." Teal shrugged him off. Sure, time is a fourth dimension, but I'm thinking about a fourth spatial dimension, like length, breadth, and thickness. For economy of materials and convenience of arrangement, you couldn't beat it, to say nothing of the saving of ground space. You could put an 8-room house on the land now occupied by a 1-room house, like a tesseract. What's a tesseract? Didn't you go to school? A tesseract is a hypercube, a square figure with 4 dimensions to it, like a cube has 3, and a square has 2. Here, I'll show you. Teal dashed out into the kitchen of his apartment and returned with a box of toothpicks, which he spilled out onto the table, brushing glasses and nearly emptying Holland gin bottle carelessly aside. "I'll need some plasticine. I had some around here last week." He burrowed into a drawer of the littered desk, which crowded only one corner of his dining room, and emerged with a lump of oily sculptor's clay. "Here's some." "What are you going to do?" "I'll show you." Teal rapidly pinched off small masses of clay and rolled them into pea-sized balls. He stuck toothpicks in the 4 of these and hooked them together into a square. "There, that's a square." "Obviously." "Another one like it. 4 more toothpicks and we'll make a cube." The toothpicks were now arranged in the framework of a square box, a cube, with the pellets of clay holding the corners together. "Now we make another cube, just like this one, and the 2 of them will be 2 sides of the tesseract." Bailey started to help him roll out little balls of clay for the second cube, but became diverted by the sensuous feel of the docile clay and started working and shaping it with his fingers. "Look," he said, holding up with a little effort, a tiny figurine. "Gypsy Rose Lee. Looks more like Gargantua. She ought to sue you. Now pay attention. You open up one corner of the first cube, interlock the second cube at the corner, and then close the corner. Then, take 8 more toothpicks and join the bottom of the first cube to the bottom of the second, on a slant. And at the top of the first to the top of the second, the same way." This he did rapidly while he talked. "What's that supposed to be?" "That's a tesseract, 8 cubes forming the sides of a hypercube in 4 dimensions." "It looks more like a cat's cradle to me. You've got only 2 cubes there anyhow. Where's the other 6? You have to use your imagination, man. Consider the top of the first cube in relation to the top of the second. There's cube number 3. Then the top-bottom squares, then the front faces of each cube, the back faces, the right hand, the left hand, 8 cubes. He pointed them out. Yeah, I see them, but they still aren't cubes. They're whatchamacallits, like prisms. They're not square, they slant. Well, that's just the way you look at it, in perspective. If you drew a picture of a cube on a piece of paper, the side squares would be slanchwise, wouldn't they? That's perspective. When you look at it fourth-dimensional figure in 3 dimensions, naturally it looks crooked. But that's all the cubes, just the same. Maybe they are to you, brother, but they still look crooked to me. Teal ignored the objections and went on. Now consider this as the framework of an 8-room house. There's 1 room on the ground. That's for service, utilities, and garage. There are 6 rooms opening off of it on the next floor. Living room, dining room, bath, bedrooms, and so forth. And up on the top, completely enclosed with windows on 4 sides, is your study. There, how do you like that? Seems to me you have the bathtub hanging out of the living room ceiling. These rooms are interlaced like an octopus. Only in perspective. Only in perspective. Here, I'll do it another way so you can see. This time, Teal made a cube of toothpicks, then made a second of halves of toothpicks, and set it exactly in the center of the first by attaching the corners of the small cube to the large cube. Now, the big cube is your ground floor. The little cube inside is your study on the top floor. The 6 cubes joining them are the living rooms. See? Bailey studied the figure and shook his head. I see 2 cubes, a big one, and a little one. The other 6 things, they look like pyramids this time instead of prisms, but they still aren't cubes. Certainly, you are seeing them in a different perspective. But can't you see that? Well, maybe, but that room on the inside there is completely surrounded by the thingamajigs. I thought you said it had windows on 4 sides. It has. It just looks like it was surrounded. That's the grand feature about a tesseract house. Complete outside exposure for every room. Every wall serves 2 rooms, and an 8-room house requires only a 1-room foundation. It's revolutionary. That's putting it mildly. You're crazy, bud. You can't build a house like that. That inside room is on the inside, and there she stays. Teal looked at his friend in controlled exasperation. It's guys like you that keep architecture in its infancy. How many square sides has a cube? Well, 6. And how many of them are inside? Well, none of them. They're all on the outside. Alright, now listen. A tesseract has 8 cubical sides, all on the outside. Now watch me. I'm going to open up this tesseract like you can open up a cubical pasteboard box until it's flat. That way, you'll be able to see all sides of the cube. Working very rapidly, he constructed 4 cubes, piling one on top of the other in an unsteady tower. Then he built out 4 more cubes, 4 exposed faces of the second cube in the pile. The structure swayed a little under the loose coupling of the clay pellets, but it stood. 8 cubes. Now, don't you see it? It rests on the ground floor room. The next 6 cubes are the living rooms, and there's your study at the top. Bailey regarded it with more approval than he had the other figures. At least I can understand it, but you say that's a tesseract? Well, this is a tesseract unfolded in 3 dimensions. To put it back together, you tuck the top cube onto the bottom cube, fold those side cubes in until they meet the top cube, and there you are. You do all this folding through a 4th dimension, of course. You don't distort any of the cubes or fold them into each other. Bailey studied the wobbly figure further. Look here, he said. Why don't you forget about folding this thing up through a 4th dimension, and you can anyway, and just build a house like this?